Hi guys, cinematic recap here. Before we start, warning. Spoilers ahead. Today, I'm gonna explain a British psychological thriller movie, called Exam. The movie follows 8 candidates who are competing for a highly coveted position at a profitable company. After touching up their appearances, the group enters a room and sits at individual desks. Each desk has a paper printed with the word candidate and a number from 1 to 8. Shortly after that, a guard with a gun enters the room, making the candidates visibly nervous. Following this, a man also enters the room and introduces himself as the invigilator. He explains that this exam is their final test, and they have 80 minutes to answer one question. He also claims that there is no federal law in this room, but there are 3 rules of the exam that must be followed by the candidates. All of them must not intentionally or accidentally spoil their paper, leave the room for any reason, or talk to him or the armed guard at the door. If they do, they will be disqualified. When no one responds, he starts the timer and then leaves the exam room. As the exam begins, the candidates turn their respective papers over, only to find them completely blank. While everyone looks confused, an Asian candidate starts writing on her paper, explaining why she thinks she is qualified for the job. However, the camera in the room catches her in the act, so the guard is ordered to remove her from the room for spoiling her paper. A few moments later, candidate number 5 realizes that they are allowed to talk to each other and collaborate. He shares this with the rest of the group, making them believe that they need to work together. First of all, they need to find what is the question before they could find the answer. Soon, candidate number 5 assigns nicknames to each of them based on skin color and hair color. He calls himself White. And the others are named Black, Brown, Blonde, Dark, Brunette. However, he calls candidate number 1 Deaf because he does not respond or speak to the group at all. Afterwards, White discovers that they can stand up from their seats as there is no such rule given by the invigilator. Because of that, he takes the chance to get up, and sure enough, the guard stays put and does not do anything to White. At one point, Brunette believes that the questions are written down invisibly on the papers. Hence, she gets up and then uses the room's lights to see if there is any writing on the paper, but unfortunately, she finds nothing. Despite this, she insists that everyone check their own papers because the question could be on just one of them. Everyone immediately checks their papers, except for Deaf, who remains quiet in his seat. Seeing this, White takes his paper and checks it using the light as well, but they still find nothing. Black suggests that the questions might be visible under UV or X-rays. At the same time, Blonde finds strips of emergency lights in the room, but they cannot find the switches. In an effort to trigger the emergency lights, the group decides to break all the light bulbs. Once all the bulbs are broken, the room suddenly glows blue due to the emergency black light. All of them start using the emergency lights to search the questions, but they still cannot find them. After a while, Brunette suggests that they remove the first layer of the strip lights as they are not lit. The women break the strip lights using their heels, revealing another form of light. Unfortunately, they have once again been met with disappointment as these lights do not work either. 20 minutes have passed, and now a frustrated White decides to experiment on the Asian candidate's paper because she had already been disqualified. He tries to trace the paper with a pencil, but still, no question appears. Therefore, he tears the paper into sections so that they can use them to experiment with different methods. White's first attempt is to urinate on one of the papers to check if it is liquid activated, but it still does not work either. Later, the group hears Deaf crying silently in his seat and babbling in French. Dark translates his words, and they find out that Deaf was asking them if they could see something in the paper, claiming that the paper reflected their respective images. However, everyone ignores him and continues their discussion. At some point, they speculate on the exam's purpose and the nature of the company. Dark claims that the CEO is highly secretive and has not been seen since the initial public offering. Hearing this, they start to crack under pressure and insult each other while coming up with several conspiracy theories behind this exam. Dark tries to calm them down and finally reveals that she knows more about the company than anyone else. It is gradually revealed that Dark is already working for the company in Human Resources Department, but she has never seen the CEO. She competes in this exam because she applied for a higher job. Furthermore, Dark explains that the company is responsible for a miracle drug designed to treat a condition afflicting a large part of the population due to a viral pandemic. Sometime later, Brunette approaches the guard and pulls a lighter out of his pocket without talking to him. She plans to use it to trigger the fire alarm, thinking that the water can potentially develop the writings on the papers. She climbs onto the desk quickly, but she cannot reach the fire alarm. Because of this, White helps her by giving her a rolled piece of paper, which she lights up and uses to trigger the alarm. The water starts coming out from the fire alarm, but the group cannot see anything on their paper. Just then, the guard walks towards Brunette, who eventually finds out that the burned paper is hers. As a result, the guard removes her from the room. Black becomes furious with White's betrayals, so he says he will punch White lights out. Suddenly, the lights in the room go out, and the group learns that they are voice activated. Not long after that, Def starts crying again. White takes advantage of the situation and bullies him into tearing his own paper. The guard approaches Def and sends him out of the room, accidentally leaving his glasses behind. The remaining candidates start to get annoyed with White's behavior. However, White begins taunting them instead, saying he has figured out the question but will not tell them. In response, Black punches White, rendering him unconscious, and then ties him to a chair. When White gains consciousness, he pleads for his medication, implying he has the virus. Black searches for the pill in his pocket, but cannot find it. Despite this, the others still do not believe White, so he loses his consciousness again. A few minutes later, White goes into convulsions, but everyone thinks he is faking it, except for Black. He claims that the seizure was caused by the virus because he is also a carrier of the disease. Therefore, the group checks each other for the pill, and Dark eventually finds it stuck to a chewing gum under Brown's table. She attempts to feed it to White, but Brown's intentionally throws it into a vent. As a result of White's deteriorating condition, Dark panics and faces the camera, pleading for help from the Invigilator. However, she is disqualified right after. Fortunately, Blonde manages to retrieve the pill with a hairpin and uses it to revive White. The group finally agrees to release White and demand to know the question. However, White suggests that there is no question, and that the company will simply hire the last remaining candidate. With this, he attempts to grab the gun from the guard, but Black pushes him aside and takes the gun instead. Unluckily for him, the gun requires the guard's fingerprint to fire, and White uses the opportunity to retrieve it. He then forces the guard's hand onto the trigger, coercing Brown to leave the room and get disqualified in the process. As Blonde prepares to exit the room as well, she shouts lights out to turn off the lights, enabling Black to attack White. But things take a turn for the worse as Black ends up being shot. White turns the lights back on and sees that Blonde is still holding one foot inside the room. Before he can kill her, the exam timer runs to 0. White confidently addresses the Invigilator of his win, but the guard approaches him and reveals that the exam timer still has 20 seconds left, resulting in White's disqualification. It is revealed that Def had earlier removed a few minutes from the countdown clock while they were busy discussing other things. Blonde walks into the room and suddenly remembers seeing Def using glasses and a piece of broken glass to read an exam paper earlier. She then takes the abandoned glasses and uses them to inspect the paper, eventually finding the phrase question 1 on the exam paper in minuscule writing. At that moment, Blonde realizes that the only question on the test was the one asked by the Invigilator at the beginning, and now she knows the answer. Meanwhile, the Invigilator enters the room and reveals that Def is the CEO of the company. Blonde walks towards them and confidently answers no to the question. The CEO and the Invigilator smile, realizing that she has passed the test. After that, the Invigilator explains that the company was seeking an administrator who could make tough decisions with attention to detail while also showing compassion, and Blonde displayed all these qualities during the exam. However, despite being offered the job, Blonde declines because she cannot work for a company that kills people. The Invigilator then reveals that in addition to finding a cure for the virus, the CEO has also discovered a method of rapid cell regeneration, which can provide the gift of life. Hence, Black is not dead yet because the bullet which hit him contained the cure, and he has been revived. Upon learning this, Blonde shakes hands with the CEO, indicating that she will accept the job. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.